Jamie Thornton knows what it's like to feel invisible, until Hazel, the most popular girl in school, pulls him into the spotlight with an invitation to her exclusive party. What begins as a spark of hope quickly becomes his darkest nightmare, as Jamie becomes the target of a cruel joke that shatters his trust and turns him into a laughingstock. With his heart broken and reputation in ruins, Jamie retreats from the world. But when his cousin Elijah, a rising music star, encourages him to find strength in his pain, Jamie transforms in ways he never imagined. Just as he reclaims his confidence, Jamie learns Hazel has secretly idolized Elijah's music. Fueled by a need for revenge, Jamie hatches a plan to teach Hazel a lesson she'll never forget, by pretending to be the one person she admires most. Yet, as Hazel is drawn deeper into Jamie's carefully constructed web, he discovers the painful secrets that drive her cruelty. Now, Jamie stands at a crossroads: continue with his plan for revenge, or break the cycle of hurt. Echoes of Shadows is a gripping story of redemption, forgiveness, and the hidden battles we fight within ourselves. Jamie Thornton kept his head down as he walked through the bustling halls of Crestwood High. He was used to the whispered jabs and smirks from classmates. "Hey, Jamie," a familiar voice called. It was Hazel Crestwood, the school's queen bee, strolling toward him with her perfectly polished smile. Hey, Hazel," Jamie stammered, surprised she even knew his name. "So, I'm having a party this Friday. You should come," she said casually, handing him a glittering invitation. Jamie's heart pounded. "Me? Really?" He couldn't believe it. Hazel tilted her head with an amused look. "Of course. I think it'd be fun," she replied, her tone unreadable. As she walked away, Jamie's mind raced. He clutched the invitation tightly, feeling a flicker of hope. Maybe this was his chance to feel like he belonged. Jamie stood in front of his mirror, trying on a sleek suit he'd rented for the party. He barely recognized himself. "You think this looks all right, Mom?" he asked, turning nervously. His mother smiled, smoothing his lapel. "You look wonderful, Jamie. You've always been more than enough," she said, but Jamie's mind was elsewhere, focused on making an impression. Determined to make the night unforgettable, he borrowed a friend's luxury car and bought an expensive bracelet for Hazel. "This is the night, Jamie," he whispered to himself, gripping the steering wheel. "Tonight's going to be different." Jamie's palms were sweaty as he walked into Hazel's grand house, surrounded by laughing, chattering students. He spotted Hazel across the room, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. "Hey, Jamie," she called, approaching with a smirk. Jamie smiled, nervously handing her the bracelet he'd bought. Hazel glanced at it, then burst out laughing. "Oh, wow, you really went all out," she sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jamie's heart sank. What's funny?" Hazel waved her hand dismissively. "This was all just a bet, Jamie. I wanted to see if I could get you to show up here, all dressed up. Guess I won." She laughed, and the room filled with laughter that seemed to close in on him. The shock and humiliation left Jamie breathless. He didn't say a word. He just turned and bolted out the door, the sound of laughter echoing in his mind. Jamie sat on his bed, scrolling through his phone in disbelief. Clips of his humiliation were all over social media, replaying his embarrassment on loop. The comments were ruthless, each one a blow to his already shattered self-esteem. Tears pricked his eyes as he threw his phone across the room. "I trusted her. I thought, maybe," his voice cracked. All the hope he'd felt was crushed, leaving nothing but anger simmering beneath the surface. "I'll show them," he muttered, fists clenched. The quiet determination in his voice was new, an ember of resolve sparking in his heart. A knock on his door interrupted Jamie's spiral. His cousin Elijah, a few years older and effortlessly cool, walked in with a knowing smile. "Hey man, heard you had a rough night." Jamie turned away, muttering, "I don't want to talk about it." Elijah sat beside him. "Look, I've been there. People suck sometimes, but you can't let them decide who you are. You're better than this, Jamie." Jamie glanced at him, skepticism mixing with curiosity. "What's the point? Everyone's already laughing." "The point is, they won't be laughing when they see the real you," Elijah replied. "Let's get you into shape. Not for them, but for you." Jamie hesitated, then nodded. All right, let's do it. Elijah handed Jamie a set of small weights. We'll start light, he said, showing Jamie how to lift them correctly. Jamie winced, struggling to keep up. Elijah, I don't know if I can do this, Jamie muttered, setting the weights down after a few reps. You can, Jamie, Elijah said firmly. It's not just about the weights. It's about showing yourself that you're worth fighting for. Jamie looked at his cousin, uncertain but willing to try. The fire in his eyes flickered, sparking a new sense of purpose. At school, Jamie ducked his head as two students snickered nearby. He bumped into Hope, a soft-spoken scholarship student who smiled at him. Hey, ignore them, Hope said, her voice gentle but strong. They don't know anything. Jamie blinked. Why are you being so nice to me? Hope shrugged. Because I've been where you are. And everyone deserves a friend. Her kindness caught him off guard, and for the first time, he felt a genuine connection that had nothing to do with popularity or appearances. Back at home, Jamie hesitated, then created an anonymous social media account. He scrolled through his classmates' lives, getting a glimpse of their everyday struggles, especially Hazel's. Her posts showed a girl seeking attention and validation, but Jamie knew there was more to her. Interesting, he whispered, his curiosity mixed with the lingering hurt, hinting at a plan forming in his mind, and Hazel became a focus of his attention once again. Jamie pushed harder in each workout, surprising even himself with his progress. Elijah stood by, encouraging him. Look at you. You're killing it, Jamie. Jamie chuckled, breathing heavily. Maybe I am, he replied, the grin on his face wider than it had been in a long time. The progress wasn't just physical, it was mental. He was shedding old fears, building new strength, and transforming not just his body, but his spirit. Yet, that dark seed of revenge lingered, taking root alongside his growing confidence. One afternoon, Jamie stumbled upon a surprising discovery. Hazel was a fan of Elijah's music. The idea struck him like lightning. He grinned to himself, feeling the thrill of possibility. Elijah, you think maybe I could message her? As you? Jamie asked casually, testing the waters. Elijah raised an eyebrow but shrugged. If that's what you want, go ahead. Jamie nodded, feeling a surge of excitement as he crafted a plan to finally reclaim control over his story. The stage was set. Jamie sat at his desk, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Posing as Elijah, he sent Hazel a casual message. Hey, I heard you're a fan. Within moments, a response popped up. Oh my gosh, is this really you, Elijah? Hazel's excitement practically leaped off the screen. Jamie smirked. Yep, it's me. Just thought I'd say hi, he replied, adopting Elijah's confident tone. Hazel's eagerness fed Jamie's resolve. Her admiration for someone she'd never met only confirmed his belief that her interest in people was skin-deep. Still, as they chatted, Jamie felt a slight pang, wondering what drove Hazel to seek validation so desperately. Days passed, and Hazel became fixated on Elijah. Each night, they messaged, with Hazel opening up about her insecurities. Sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, you know, she typed. Jamie was taken aback. This wasn't the arrogant Hazel he thought he knew. Everyone feels that way, he replied cautiously, feeling a slight tug of sympathy. But even as he empathized, he reminded himself of her cruelty. Her obsession with his celebrity cousin only made him more determined. Her trust in him, though unknowing, played right into his plan. Hazel messaged him one evening, gushing about the upcoming prom. It's the biggest event of the year, she wrote. Jamie seized the moment. Want me to be your date? Hazel's response was instant. Yes, absolutely. She was so elated she didn't hesitate to break things off with her boyfriend, banking her reputation on Elijah's promise. Jamie closed his phone, satisfaction coursing through him. Hazel had sacrificed her relationship and social standing, all for the chance to flaunt her celebrity date. Everything was falling into place. After school, Jamie sat with Hope in the courtyard. You seem happier these days, she remarked, smiling. Maybe I am, Jamie replied, enjoying her company. Hope's genuine kindness made him question his plan. Around her, he didn't feel the need for revenge. Her warmth was a stark contrast to the coldness he associated with Hazel. "Remember, people can surprise you," Hope said, sensing Jamie's inner conflict. Her words lingered with him, challenging his perspective in a way he hadn't expected. The next day, Jamie heard the rumors that Hazel had broken up with her boyfriend. She was telling everyone about her big surprise for prom. Jamie watched her from across the hall, feeling both satisfaction and doubt. Hazel's desperation and blind trust underscored the impact of his plan, but a new unease simmered within him. Still, he resolved to see it through, his heart torn between the thrill of revenge and a budding empathy that threatened to unravel everything. Hazel stood in her bedroom, admiring her reflection as she tried on a shimmering gown she'd chosen for prom. "This is it," she whispered to herself, a smile creeping onto her face. But she knew the dress alone wouldn't make the night perfect. She'd need everything to impress Elijah. Desperate, she stole one of her mother's expensive necklaces. "She won't notice," Hazel reasoned, slipping the necklace into her purse. She was willing to do whatever it took to dazzle him, unaware of the trap Jamie was setting. Elijah watched Jamie with a cautious eye. "So, you're really going through with this?" he asked, arms crossed. Jamie nodded. "She deserves it, Elijah. After what she did, I need her to feel that same humiliation." Elijah shook his head. "You think this will make you feel better? Cruelty won't heal your pain, Jamie." Jamie hesitated, but then looked away. "Maybe not, but it's the only way I know to move on." Elijah's words lingered, but the desire for revenge remained. That evening, Jamie met up with Hope, who eyed him knowingly. "I know about your plan, Jamie," she said gently. Jamie froze, taken aback. "You do?" Hope nodded. "I just don't think this will bring you peace. I know Hazel hurt you, but revenge might leave you feeling empty." Jamie looked at her, conflicted. "What else can I do?" Hope reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe there's room for forgiveness. For both of you." Her words stirred something in him, though he wasn't ready to admit it. On the eve of prom, Jamie messaged Hazel as Elijah, confirming their plans. "I'll meet you there," he wrote, his fingers trembling slightly. Hazel's reply was immediate, full of excitement and gratitude. Jamie closed his eyes, torn between his desire for revenge and the unsettling empathy he felt creeping in. He knew this would be his last night of harboring these feelings, whatever the outcome. The next morning, Jamie ensured that rumors of Hazel's celebrity date spread across school. "Elijah Thornton is coming with Hazel," students whispered. As Jamie watched from a distance, anticipation and anxiety twisted within him. He had set the stage for her public embarrassment, but now, with the night drawing closer, he felt a weight that no victory could lift. Hazel stepped into the prom venue, every eye turning to her as she entered. She was radiant, the epitome of confidence, her head held high. "Tonight's my night," she whispered to herself, imagining how everyone would react when they saw her with Elijah. A few of her friends approached, wide-eyed. "Is it true? You're really here with Elijah Thornton?" one of them asked in awe. Hazel smiled mysteriously. "You'll just have to wait and see," she replied, her heart racing with excitement. She was ready to bask in the envy and admiration. Just then, the doors opened again, and Jamie entered with Hope on his arm. Heads turned as people gasped in shock. Jamie looked entirely different, fit, confident, and beaming. Hope, dressed in a stunning gown, smiled at him, her warmth and support evident. "Jamie?" Hazel's friends murmured in disbelief. Hazel, catching sight of Jamie, felt a pang of confusion and something else she couldn't place. As Jamie's gaze met hers, he smiled faintly, and she saw a strength in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The murmurs around Hazel grew louder. Suddenly, an older man appeared at her side, wearing a suit and holding a sign with Elijah written on it in bold letters. Confusion turned to horror as Hazel realized she'd been duped. "No, this can't be happening," she muttered. Her cheeks flushed as laughter rippled through the crowd. Her friends stared, stunned, while others began to laugh openly. Jamie watched her from across the room, satisfaction mingling with an unexpected feeling of discomfort. Hazel's devastation was clear, and suddenly, His plan didn't feel as triumphant as he had imagined. Hazel, her face burning with humiliation, fled to a corner of the ballroom, struggling to hold back tears. Jamie hesitated but eventually followed her, driven by a need he couldn't quite name. "Why did you do this?" Hazel asked, her voice trembling. Jamie took a deep breath. "Because I wanted you to feel what it's like to be humiliated." Hazel's face crumpled. "You don't understand. Nothing I do ever feels like enough." She revealed her deepest insecurity, being adopted and never feeling truly part of her family. Jamie saw the pain in her eyes, realizing they both carried wounds. Jamie softened, the anger he'd held melting away. Maybe we both needed to learn something," he said quietly. Hazel looked up, her eyes searching his. "I'm sorry, Jamie, for everything." Jamie nodded, a gentle smile forming. "Me too." As the night wound down, they shared a quiet moment, an unspoken truce forming between them. Forgiveness filled the space where resentment had been, and they each felt lighter, knowing they had left the shadows behind. The next morning, Jamie sat with Hope, reflecting on the night. "It wasn't what I expected," he admitted, looking down. Hope gently placed her hand on his. "You did what you thought you needed to, but now it's time to move forward. You've grown so much, Jamie." Jamie nodded, feeling lighter. "Thank you, Hope, for everything." She smiled. "You're welcome. Now let's focus on the good that's ahead." Hazel returned home, where her adoptive parents awaited her. "What happened last night, Hazel?" her mother asked, disappointed. Tears welled up in Hazel's eyes. I just wanted to be seen," her father sighed. "Maybe it's time you stop trying to impress everyone else and figure out who you really are." This conversation marked a turning point for Hazel, forcing her to confront her need for validation and the emptiness it left her with. Before leaving for his music tour, Elijah met Jamie. "You've come a long way, Jamie," Elijah said, giving him a firm hug. Jamie smiled. "Thanks, Elijah. I don't think I could have done this without you." Elijah chuckled. "Just remember, your worth doesn't come from what others think. It's in who you choose to be." As they parted, Jamie felt a sense of gratitude and newfound strength, knowing he'd taken control of his own story. Back at school, Jamie saw Hazel across the hall. She approached him hesitantly. "Can we start over?" she asked, her voice softer than he'd ever heard. Jamie nodded, a small smile forming. "I think we both deserve a fresh start." Their shared experiences had reshaped them, and an unspoken respect grew between them, a friendship built on understanding and empathy. As Jamie walked out of school with Hope by his side, he felt a peace he hadn't known before. "What's next for you, Jamie?" Hope asked, smiling. Jamie grinned. "Living without holding on to grudges, for one." Together, they stepped into the sunlight, ready for the future. Jamie had let go of the shadows of his past, embracing the path ahead with open arms.